everyone. This is Kelly from Left Media. Today is March 10, 2022. I'm here at the State House of New Hampshire in Concord, and I see Elliot here. Hi, Elliot. How are you?
I'm great. How are you?
Good, good. Hey, could you please introduce yourself to the audience of Level 5 of your name and your position and why are you here today?
Sure. Elliot, I go by Alu Axelman. I'm the founder and editor-in-chief of LibertyBlock.com, and it's the Liberty Block. It's a pro-freedom, pro-independence publication based in New Hampshire, and currently the third biggest site in New Hampshire. I'm also the president and chairman of the board of the Foundation for New Hampshire Independence. It's a 501c3, so technically I'm not representing the foundation being here in my capacity today as a citizen. I'm here today in the State House Gallery to support New Hampshire independence. There's legislation called CACR 32, and that legislation would seek to put the question of independence on the ballot for the people to vote on. The question of whether to be in this horrific union with DC politicians who abuse us, run up a $30 trillion debt, and force us to fund every which type of abuse of every natural right in existence. The question has not been put to the voters of New Hampshire ever, and even our representatives, our delegates, have not had a chance to make their voice heard on whether to be in the union since 245 years ago, when a few delegates from New Hampshire went to the Constitution, the convention, to decide whether to be in the union. So the people of New Hampshire, no people, have had a chance in 245 years to reassess whether we should be in the union and controlled by increasingly abusive and disgusting, tyrannical, corrupt, evil DC politicians. So CACR 32 is just a question of whether the legislature will allow the question to move to the ballot so the people can have the ultimate decision on this extremely important issue. Now, there are a lot of legislators in there right now planning to table the bill. I heard that there's going to be a motion made to table the bill. And instead of just killing the bill, they don't even want debate. Before you kill a bill with an IPL motion, there's some debate and some speeches. They want to table this bill with zero debate. So they are afraid of debate. They don't even want debate on the question of this bill, which only seeks to move the bill to the Senate, which only seeks to put the question on the ballot. They are so afraid of any discussion. So they're going to try to table the bill with the zero discussion and kill the bill and be done with it. Numerous times, legislators have told me to my face, at least two to my face, and everyone else has told me either online or by other communication or has just ignored me. I've requested to debate every legislator who opposes this. And what I said is, if you oppose independence so much that you don't want the question to go to the ballot for the people, if you don't even want debate about this legislation, about whether to put it on the ballot, if you hate independence so much, you should clearly want to debate me because you have your points in order and you have strong reasons for opposing independence and protecting DC politicians. And here's what it comes down to. Do we have a fundamental right to self-governance? Do we have a fundamental right to even have the discussion to let the people vote on independence? Any legislator who believes that the people should not have a chance to vote on self-governance from DC politicians maybe shouldn't even be in the State House, even if they support liberty otherwise. And that's how I know Danny Miller feels in Texas and a lot of others feel throughout the United States. If they don't trust us to vote, if they are saying that we are so stupid, here's what it comes down to. Anyone who votes against this or votes to kill this bill or does not vote for this bill is essentially saying, I am protecting DC politicians, I'm protecting Biden, Pelosi, Schumer, McConnell from people like Shao and Alu. So I hate Shao, I hate Alu, I hate New Hampshire citizens, and I'm protecting DC politicians from those scary people. I won't even let them vote on whether to sever ties with them. So literally, if you want the abused wife to even have a say whether to divorce her husband, they're protecting the husband from the woman being able to even file for divorce. This is sickening. This is the most enabling of abuse anyone can possibly do. So we're going to see what happens there. Most likely they're going to table it, but let's see. Do we have a few dozen state reps who have the courage and backbone to stand up and at least not kill the bill and allow for some debate and some discussion? And again, any state rep who votes to kill this bill with no debate, if they refuse to debate in public, they're absolute spineless cowards who hate freedom and hate independence, and they definitely do not deserve to be here. So if you vote against this, you better debate me. You know how to find me. I'm on Twitter at Alu Axelman, libertyblock.com, aluaxelman@gmail.com. You all have my phone number. Half the reps in there have my phone number, and we do talk regularly, and you know my email. If you vote against this bill and you refuse to debate me on independence, you're a spineless coward who should not be here. So there you go. Check out libertyblock.com. Check out nhindependence.org. Thank you very much. Ciao.
Hold on, not yet. So for the people that are watching that don't understand the term table the bill, what does it mean to them?
Yeah, the two ways to kill a bill are ITL, which kills the bill, or table, which puts the bill on the table, and it's dead unless 2/3 vote to take it off the table. So it's essentially dead as well. The difference is the ITL motion, there's some debates, some speeches and everything. The table motion, technically it's a pretty privileged motion, I believe, and there's little to no debate. Essentially, they want no debate on it. So you could do a PI and get in a tiny, quick word. But the big difference between tabling and killing a bill from ITL motion is they table a bill if they want no discussion about the bill. And people are so afraid to let the co-sponsors the people who oppose independence, the statists, the authoritarian cowards who love DC politicians and hate people like you and me in New Hampshire, regular red staters. They are so afraid of debate that they want to table this and have zero discussion. They don't even want discussion on the question of whether to even vote properly on the bill that only seeks to send it to the Senate, and if it passes both chambers, then it goes onto the ballot for the question of the people. Now, if it gets on the ballot, if it did pass with 60% in the House and the Senate, it would go on the ballot. And on the ballot question in November, it would only go into effect and would only leave the Union if 67%, 2/3 of New Hampshire citizens vote in favor of the ballot measure. So the people in there who say people don't want this, prove me wrong. There are plenty of passionate New Hampshire independence activists who do believe that 2/3 of the people do want this. We believe we're right. If it goes on the ballot, we'll get 2/3. Let's see what the people think. If we don't get 2/3, if we get 5% or 10% of the vote, we look stupid. Every legislator in there who opposes this, which is the majority of them, would love to make me look stupid because I'm representing New Hampshire independence. They would love to make New Hampshire independence activists look stupid. So put it on the ballot and prove us wrong. By killing this bill with no debate, they are totally saying they are very afraid that there's a realistic chance that 2/3 of the people of New Hampshire support New Hampshire independence, and if they let them go to the polls, they're going to vote to leave the Union. That's what they're afraid of, and there's no other way about it. Otherwise, they would pass the bill and let the people vote on it.
And so today you're just observing in the gallery because there's no participation in the public, right? Okay. Well, so what is your hunch that's going to happen today? What is your prediction?
It's hard to say exactly what will happen. I heard there's going to be a table motion to table it with no debate. Then the way you can speak if there's a table motion is if you quickly say you want to do a parliamentary inquiry. And I think Matt Santonastasso, one of the co-sponsors, is going to make that short speech called a PI, and he'll get a few points in saying, hey, let the people vote or at least have some discussion on independence. And then there's going to be a vote on whether to table the bill. We need to essentially kill it with no debate. On that motion, if they call for a roll call vote, we can at least get everyone on record so we can see how many reps are voting to kill the bill with essentially zero debate, to kill this legislation, which is totally improper to do that to bills. On the motion to table, that'll be a vote on whether to table this legislation. Will we get, everyone unanimously, all 400 supporting the table motion? I don't know. I think the sponsors and 10, 20, 30 others, maybe 50, will vote no on the table motion. So right now, the thing practically that I'm looking for is to see how many legislators vote no on the table motion. So there's a motion to table CAC 32. If we can get 50 reps even or 80 reps to vote no on the table motion, meaning to keep the bill alive, to allow for some debate maybe, and maybe a motion to pass the bill, that would be great. Then we'll see. But right now I'm predicting anywhere between 20 and 60 reps will vote no on the table motion. So we'll see how it goes. I'm hoping for a roll call vote so we can know who to target, because very likely a lot of people already want to primary every single representative, either primary or beat them in the general election if they don't vote for this. Because all this is doing is saying let people vote. If you vote no on this, if you vote to kill this bill, you're saying people are too stupid to be entrusted to vote on the most important thing, which is self-governance and their relationship with DC politicians. So again, if they vote to kill this bill, they're saying, I love DC politicians so much. I love the federal government that currently is in Congress right now in DC spending trillions more of our dollars and our grandchildren's dollars and plummeting us further into debt, destroying our currency inflation, destroying our savings, and killing people on fixed incomes. They're saying they love DC politicians so much, they're insulating them from the scary people who are seeking to even go to the ballot and answer a question. They're protecting them from us, which should be the backwards, the other way, right? They should be protecting us from DC politicians. So everyone who votes no on this is not a statesman, and maybe they shouldn't be here at all. So that's what we're looking for as far as it'll probably be a table motion.
So let's say worst case scenario that is got tabled or killed, can you have it resubmit again with this same idea bill?
Yeah, next year will be a new term and a new session. So this term, this 2-year term of these two sessions is over this year. We'll have elections in November. So after November, December, January, sometime this winter, the new legislature, which might have a different makeup, some may not get reelected. We most likely the activists and the legislators will submit again a CACR or a regular bill. Also, probably a bill to form a study commission. So a bill that doesn't make a law, it just directs the legislature to study how independence would work and to start reaching out to DC and telling them we're going to start thinking about independence. If we are independent, where do you want your embassy in our state, and start making communications with our State Department and their State Department, and start separating the military and all things like that. All the many logistics things you have to do will be separate. So a study commission bill is a great idea, which we thought about. We decided not to do this year. Next year, a lot of us may decide to do it. Some legislators may propose that. So a study commission bill, a regular bill, maybe a CACR, a constitutional amendment as well. So we might do all those next year. So next year we'll definitely be back. And again, this is the start. We have all the momentum. If we get 5, 10, 20 votes, 50, 100, or 240 votes, this is the start of a movement that's never going to stop until we get independence. In 1776, the movement started in around 1770 or 1760. They knew it was going to take 5, 10, 20 years, and it took 20 years. They finally, declared independence in 76, and the war was going on for years, I believe. So it was a start of something, and they had all the momentum, and they won eventually against all odds. They said you couldn't leave, you can't secede, it's illegal. We heard all the same things 245 years ago. They say it's illegal. Okay, if it wasn't illegal in 1776, it's not illegal now. And that's not. The right to self-governance and leaving an abuser is a natural right that everyone has. So hopefully, it'll take a few years, and we'll all the momentum, because DC politicians make themselves look worse and us look better every day. So if it doesn't pass this year, we'll come back next year. And within 5, 10 years, I don't think it'll be a 30-year thing. Within 5, 10 years, either the union will collapse or we're going to leave. And once the union collapses, we're free to leave because it won't exist anymore. So I think within 10 years, I would bet good money has it New Hampshire will be a sovereign nation. I just want to get that started and get the ball rolling even quicker, because I'm not very patient.
Great. Thank you for your time, Elliot. I'm going to go and show the view in this real quick so the audience can see. Thank you for your time. Thank you. So I'm going to walk you guys through when you think with Elliot. You see, this is the gallery that the public can participate. You mean participating, you mean you can sit here and observe and film like I do. I just want to show you guys the full house that we were just talking about to State Rep Fred Duchette earlier. This is an awesome sight to see. And you can see
All those persons have an opportunity to vote. Also, can you say you vote? Under 18 voting nay, under 59 voting nay.
So Joe Kelly from LFI Media.
Group of friends includes my best friend, where it could be far more productive in a different direction. And all I want to do is like sort of tell them, you know, like I just want to share with my friends this really great thing that I've, you know, that I've figured out. And all I can do, and all that seems to happen is it's like, you know, shut up. Not, I disagree with your point here, here, and here. Like there's not debate. There's, you know, I'm sick of talking about this. Why do you keep attacking us? You know, and I like, you know, there's a foundation in my relationship with my friends that has to do with debate. You know, like we, you know, debate a lot. And what it feels like to me is that they clearly don't have points to make to show me, like, I could be wrong. You know, like absolutely positively could be wrong, but nobody can kind of make points to show me where I'm missing this thing or that thing. And like, you know, I want to show them what they're missing. And like, this is all out of generosity, but it's clearly not working. Like I'm at the point that I understand it is not working.
I think I just disagree with the way you see things, because I saw Penguin today giving you points to explain to you why he doesn't feel that New Hampshire is their project is a waste of effort. And it seems to me that you just don't want to hear it. It seems to me like you already are stuck in your beliefs. You don't want to hear what they believe. And at that point, I would say it is time to realize you can't change their minds and just work on spending your energy where it's most efficient, which is working on your passion project.
Maybe I could ask a question like, what would it take? What would I have to achieve? What would I have to show you to show that this, you know, that my idea is effective and good? Is there any way like that, or do I just have to let it go?
Actually, I don't think that that your friends disagree that your project is good.
To the activists, what are most of the free staters like? So I would claim.
Want to stay? You don't want to stay for more? Well, it's up to you. Hang on. 603-283-6160 is the number here. If you've got advice for Mark, he says he needs help communicating with his friends. It's Free Talk Live. Bonnie was too.
Yeah, look at us.
So there are more people coming here than ever before, and it looks like I spoke with Mark Warden, who's the Porcupine real estate guy. He was at they had a big table, of course, at the convention that Bonnie and I went to over the weekend, the Liberty Forum, and I asked him how things are shaping up, because all he does is real estate, and probably 90+% of his customers are free staters. And he says it's looking like it's going to be on par with last year, at least, if not. You know, we're not only just a couple months in at this point, but so it may get better. It may get even bigger than last year, but definitely on track. So you want an excuse to come check out New Hampshire and experience what it's like to be around more freedom-loving people than you can possibly get to know, because that's how it is here. You want to go to one or both of these festivals. Porcupine Freedom Festival, that's the big one, and it's nearing sellout status. According to Dennis, the organizer of the Porcupine Freedom Festival, they are now at 94% sold out. So almost there. If you are considering getting tickets to the Porcupine Freedom Festival, you ought to do it like this week, it sounds like. They may extend the tickets out a little bit, but that may not happen. So now's your chance to get those. Keep in mind the campsites are sold out already for the campground, Rogers Campground, during the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So you're probably either going to need to ask nicely from other people who have campsites if they're willing to share, or find some hotel that's not sold out in the region. Now, for Fork Fest, which is the week after the Porcupine Freedom Festival, Fork Fest week is June 27th through July 3rd. It's going to be the 6th annual Fork Fest. Fork Fest is decentralized, so there's no ticket cost. There's no tickets to buy. All you have to do is get your RV site, your campsite, or your motel room with Rogers Campground for June 27th through July 3rd. It's definitely a much lower attendance in past years, kind of like the after party for the Porcupine Freedom Festival. So if you want a relaxing week in the woods.
Lower attendance than the Porcupine Freedom Festival, right?
Correct.
Not lower and lower every year.
No,
it's
I don't
getting
think
bigger
so.
every year.
I don't know. I wasn't there last year.
Well, that's
so
what I heard from people who did go.
Yeah, there was a pretty good turnout last year for
Okay,
Fork
good.
Fest. Yeah.
But it's definitely a little bit of a different flavor. And if you want to spend Independence Day with freedom-loving people here in the Shire, you definitely want to come up to Forkfest. You can go to forkfest.party to learn more about the event. Again, everything's unofficial. There's no organizers of this thing. So if there's something you want to see happen, you should probably do that thing, whether it's bring your own poker table to have
I'm
a
gonna
poker
do
game,
karaoke.
bring your own
Nice.
speaker, microphone, and laptop or whatever for karaoke, or if you want to, play it, have a band play, then you should be that band, I guess, because you got to be the creator of the thing to happen over at Forkfest. Forkfest.party. We're going to go back to Mark. He's on the line here. He's got some concerns about reaching his friends here in New Hampshire, attempting to communicate something that he thinks is a really important idea, and he feels like he's not as effective at this as he could be. And ladies, you had some advice for him. I don't know if y'all had a chance to fully express your opinions or thoughts, so I wanted to continue if y'all wanted to.
Well, I think I pretty much answered all his questions.
Well, in that case,
Oh man, I can't get a signal.
Man.
I don't know what we're gonna do out here.
right, Mr. Speaker, we have one speaker. He's speaking for. He's going to be very brief.
Members, take your seats. The Committee on Public Works and Highways, to which was referred House Bill 1456 FN, an act relative to Hampton Marine Memorial. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and a recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Representative Michael Edgar for the committee. The amendment 0039H, printed in House Record 9, pages 42. Are you ready for the question on the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it, and the amendment is adopted. The chair recognizes Representative Ager to speak for the committee report.
Mr. Speaker, I rise to speak in favor of HB 1456. It concerns the Hampton Marine Memorial. Yeah, the Hampton Marine Memorial is for those service members and also for those merchant marine service members who either lost at sea and their bodies weren't found, or for those that were buried at sea. Okay. This bill increases the eligibility for inclusion on the monument. Okay, we have, that would actually include now, according to the bill, we would include Desert Storm, Desert Shield, and also the war on terrorism, following the 9/11 attack. Okay, this would allow us to put on the memorial Marine Corps Corporal Jonathan Currier, who was lost at sea off of the Philippines in 2018. It would also allow us to put on it Marine Corps Captain Gary Dillon. He was from Concord, who was actually lost at sea after a mid-air collision of his helicopter doing a night training just before Desert Storm. He was lost in the Arabian Sea. So, what I guess I want to add is that I know Jonathan very well. He was a fine young man. Well, thank you for considering the bill.
For what reason to memorize? Question before the House is the ought to pass with amendment motion on House Bill 1456. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes have it. The committee report is adopted. For what reason does a member rise?
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, knowing how hard our friend from Hampton has worked on this bill and the eloquence of his remarks this afternoon, I'd ask they be placed in the permanent journal.
Without objection? The Committee on State, Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs, to which was referred House Bill 1411 FN, an act relative to transparency of federal agency operations within New Hampshire. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and a recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator William Foster for the committee. The amendment House will come to order. It's awful, awful loud. The amendment is 0194H, printed in House Record 9, pages 42. The question is on the amendment. Are you ready for the question? All those in favor say it. For what reason does the member rise?
For clarification, Mr. Speaker, we have CACR up there, 32. It has no amendments, and some of us are confused.
Okay. With paperwork got a little mixed up, so we are back to CACR 32, and then we'll, yeah. Committee on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs, to which was referred CACR 32, an act relating to independence, providing that the state peaceably declares independence from the United States, proceeds as a sovereign nation. Having considered the same, report the same with the following resolution. Resolved that it's inexpedient to legislate. Senator Brody DeShays for the committee. What reason does the member rise?
Mr. Speaker, to make a motion to
State your motion.
Table this.
State your
bill.
motion. The motion is to
Table
table.
COG 32, yes.
A roll call has been requested. That is sufficiently seconded. Members will take their seats. This will be a roll call vote. House will come to order. The motion before us is the tabling motion on CACR 32. The chair recognizes Santo Notasto for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that it is a long-standing American value that government requires the consent of the governed, and if I know that no New Hampshire citizen alive today gave their consent to be governed by this federal government, and if I know this bill will give New Hampshire citizens the historic opportunity to affirm their consent, then would I press the red button so another motion can be made?
Chair recognizes Representative Baldessaro for a parliamentary inquiry.
Mr. Speaker, if I know that the representative from Ware did a great job in breaking this down on the reasons why this should not go to the voters. And Mr. Speaker, what I know, and if you all knew, that there are no rules whatsoever what would happen to your retirement, police, military, funding, bases, no rules whatsoever on this, and there's nothing in the Constitution. Then would I speak on behalf of all, and let's just vote this table and move on. Thank you.
The motion before us is a tabling motion on CACR 32. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. We're in the voting zone. Members will stay in their seats. All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attend to the state of the vote. 162 voting yea, 170 voting nay. The motion to table fails.
Tim Smith will go first, and Sandra Wisconsin.
We're back to the initial motion of inexpedient to legislate. Chair recognizes Representative Tim Smith to speak for the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. So this is the first time I've come up to the microphone this session, and those of you who've been here for a few terms realize that I'm someone who comes up to the microphone a lot. So I hope that you'll appreciate the gravity that it took to get me down here today. Normally I prepare remarks, but not this time. I tried a dozen times to write a speech for this, but I just couldn't do it. It's too personal for too many of us here in the room. It's too personal for me. I'm a direct descendant of Captain John Smith, who fought alongside George Washington, that guy, to establish the United States as an independent nation. I'm also a direct descendant of Sergeant Garrett Preston Smith, who fought in the US Civil War to keep the United States one nation, undivided. A lot of folks in this room have similar stories from their own families, have similar lineages that they look back upon. And even if you don't, we have a communal heritage here in New Hampshire with a unique place in American history. It was New Hampshire's adoption of the US Constitution. We were the 9th state to ratify the US Constitution, which was the vote that made it official and sent it into effect for all of the 13 colonies. We did that. It was this state, it was New Hampshire, that created the United States of America. Fast forward a few decades, we had a civil war, as a few breakaway states decided that they would rather go do their own thing and establish a country founded on the principles of chattel slavery. Well, New Hampshire didn't think that was such a good idea, so we answered President Lincoln's call, that guy, and we sent troops down to put a stop to that. Folks might not realize this, but when we walk into this building through the front foyer, we come in through a room called the Hall of Flags. The regimental battle standard from the New Hampshire Regiment that liberated the Confederate capital city of Richmond, Virginia, is downstairs on the first floor of this building. New Hampshire liberated the Confederate capital and when Jefferson Davis and his little cohort ran fleeing with their tails between their legs, they were running from New Hampshire soldiers. And I am proud of that heritage and legacy that we all carry with us here in this chamber and every day that we carry on as an elected official in this state. And all of this transcends party, this transcends ideology. We are Americans and we are from New Hampshire. Fast forward a few more decades. When I first got elected in 2012, there were 3 things I absolutely never thought that I would vote on during my tenure in the New Hampshire House. articles of impeachment, and we came close a couple of years ago. We had a bill called, it was a bill of address. It was the first step in an impeachment proceeding. So there was number one. Number two was formal disciplinary actions against members of the House. Unfortunately, we had that a couple of years ago. So that was number two. And here we are with number three, articles of secession. You know, it's almost impossible to even talk about this without breaking down. I mean, I apologize for my composure, Mr. Speaker. I am close to tears right now because this is such a deeply personal issue. You know, we have this legislation in front of us. It is a bill to destroy the United States. We stand in the shadow, literally, of Abraham Lincoln and George Washington. And we are considering legislation to take a star off of that flag. Every single one of us stood for the Pledge of Allegiance and national anthem this morning. Every single one of us took the same oath of office to support and defend the Constitution of the United States. And we have legislation now seeking to destroy the Constitution of the United States. That is beyond shameful, it is beyond disgraceful, and it is a stain on the proud history of the state that we even have to entertain this being introduced through the administrative process, never mind, you know, getting far enough along to have a vote on the floor of the House. It was really close to the textbook definition under Title 18 of the US Code. It was really close to the definition of advocating overthrow of the US government when this CACR was introduced. When co-sponsors signed on, it was really close to seditious conspiracy. A vote for this is really close to the federal definition of treason. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. Does a member yield to questions? Member does not yield. The chair recognizes Santa Natasto to speak against the committee report.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, the United States is not going to outlast the sun. One day it will end. If you declared in 1985 that the Soviet Union would be completely gone in the next decade, you would be considered a crazy person. But in 91, it was gone. The American religion is the US dollar. Our biggest export, inflation. Few understand the privilege we have had to create money from nothing and export our inflation, living on the backs of the rest of the world. When the world stops subsidizing the dollar, the federal government loses its ability to dictate the state's behavior, unable to bribe them with worthless money, and quickly the union will fall apart. This national divorce is going to happen. It's inevitable, and we have an opportunity to get ahead of it. The historic motion CACR 32 calls on for a vote by the New Hampshire citizens on the question of state independence. At the committee hearing, many objections were raised, all which were answered by the pro-independent citizens who testified, and some which I'll address again today. The biggest objection alleged is this whole effort is treasonous, that any moves towards independence for any state is illegal and unconstitutional. If it were unconstitutional for a state to secede, this prohibition would have been included in the original Constitution per the 9th and 10th Amendments. Since it's not specifically included there, there is no such restriction, and that power is left to the states. Additionally, everything states are not permitted to do are listed in Article 1, Section 10 of the Constitution. It does not mention anything about separating from the Union, therefore it is not prohibited. And to those who say that per the Articles of Confederation, this union is perpetual and that this concept was adopted by the US Constitution, we ask, has there ever been in history a union that was undissolvable? The federal government often supports independence movements in other nations. Is the US the only perpetual nation in the history of the world? Is there truly nothing the federal government could do that would allow a state to declare independence? And even if this move towards independence is illegal or treasonous, which I do not believe it to be, it would be no more so than the one in 1776, which is celebrated by everybody in this body. To quote from the Declaration of Independence, when in the course of human events it becomes necessary for one people to dissolve the political bands which have connected them with another, and to assume among the powers of the earth the separate and equal station to which the laws of nature and of nature's God entitle them. A decent respect to the opinions of mankind requires that they should declare the causes which impel them to the separation. We hold these truths to be self-evident, that all men are created equal and they are endowed by the Creator with certain unalienable rights, that among these are life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness, that to secure these rights, governments are instituted among men, deriving their powers from the consent of the governed, that whatever any form of government becomes destructive of these ends, it is the right of the people to alter and or abolish it, and to institute new government, laying its foundation on such principles and organizing its powers in such form as to them shall seem the most likely to affect their safety and happiness. Prudence indeed will dictate that governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes, and accordingly all experience has shown that mankind are more disposed to suffer while evils are sufferable than to right themselves by abolishing the forms to which they are accustomed. But when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government and to provide new guards for their future security. To assert that those who wrote this document went on to create a government that contradicts the principles on which it was founded is ludicrous and absurd. Returning to the alleged violation of the Constitution, I'm surprised that some are troubled by violations of the U.S. Constitution. It is not even possible to list all the violations on the other party of this document, making this contract void in the perspective of any contract law that has ever existed. There is no evidence that the federal government is bound by the Constitution. Does our Constitution allow an intelligence community, which to quote the current Senate Majority Leader, has 6 ways a Sunday of getting back at you if you cross them, that works so hard to undermine the 45th president of this country and to assure the election of our current president? Those who oppose this idea because in so many words, the Civil War settled that issue, we must assume that had the colonists lost the war in the 1700s, that their words would not have been universally and everlasting true, that their veracity depended upon winning a war. Do we believe that other conquering nations have a right to forcefully rule over the conquered because might makes right? For lack of power, do we surrender the principle of self-determination for a state any more or less than the individual? Some oppose this because governments long established should not be changed for light and transient causes. We are at a point beyond this. Does anyone believe that the current powers of the federal government over every aspect of our lives, from toilets to light bulbs, from taxation to vaccine mandates, from bankrupt Social Security to our $30 trillion deficit, the war on drugs, border patrols within 100 miles national borders, how children are taught in our schools, and arbitrary no-fly lists are just light and transient causes? A federal government with approximately 400 agencies and more laws, federal crimes, and rules than anyone in the country is even aware of. A federal government that has sent our sons and daughters to foreign countries and involved them in countless foreign entanglements, often leading to their deaths. For those who label this effort un-American, referring back to the founding Declaration of Independence, but when a long train of abuses and usurpations pursuing invariably the same object evinces a design to reduce them under absolute despotism, it is their right, it is their duty to throw off such government. How could one possibly argue that the words of the Declaration of Independence were un-American? For concerns such as what is the plan or how we will survive, there are plenty of examples of smaller countries in the world that function independently and even thrive. But also, it would be absurd to just tell a battered wife that she can't divorce until she has a plan. This is not a fringe idea. Hashtag national divorce trends on the internet. There's a similar movement in California, which will flourish again when Republicans take the U.S. Congress later this year. There's an independence movement in Texas and several movements to move borders of cities as in Atlanta or the states as in the greater Idaho movement. Hollywood star Ron Perlman recently stated, "It's time that every state that would elect Republicans to represent them and all the rest of us separate. You don't want to live in my world, and I certainly don't want to live in yours." Sarah Silverman has endorsed national divorce. Ted Cruz and Congressman Massey and Green have spoken in support of national divorce. Media personalities, including Glenn Beck, Ben Shapiro, Matt Walsh, Tim Pool, and others have spoken in support of splitting up the union before it's too late. This bill has no one in the chamber voting directly on secession. It asks them only to allow those we purport to represent to make their own decisions. If our state was currently independent, would we choose to join the union in the situation that it's in? The answer is obviously no. So we should allow our citizens the opportunity to determine their own future. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The House will be in order. No motion is to be shown from the gallery or we'll have it cleared. Does the member yield to questions?
Yes, I'll yield.
Representative Abramson?
Do I need to turn this on?
No, it was other people.
Is this on? Oh, there we go. Thank you, Mr. Speaker, and I thank the member for taking my question. Do you believe that the people of the Ukraine have the right to resist Soviet military aggression right now?
Definitely.
Follow up?
This is not anything to do with the bill. So if you're going to ask a question, ask about the bill itself.
All right. Can I respond to a remark that was made by a previous speaker?
No, that's not. You're here to ask a question.
All right. Can I ask what you believe? It's on topic. It's definitely on topic.
You may.
Would you believe that my grandmother, who just passed away at the age of 99, would tell us stories about the Civil War, and that we had members of our family on my grandmother's side who fought in the Civil War, and that they risked their lives, and some of them died, to end slavery, not to subject us to socialist tyranny from a top-down federal government?
Yes, I believe that. Thank you.
Now, what would you believe? Does the member yield to further questions?
No questions.
Yes?
No.
No. The member does not yield.
Mr. Speaker, can I ask for a roll call vote?
Roll call has been, you already asked, the roll call has been requested. I didn't ask for a second yet, but I guess that is a second. We have one more speaker, so members take your seats. The chair recognizes Representative DeShays to speak for the committee report.
Well, thank you for indulging me, Mr. Speaker, and thank you to the members of the House for listening. And I know I'll be brief. I'll be succinct. First, let me say I'm amazed that I must speak as to why this is a bad idea, not only logistically but constitutionally. Why this is impossible, why it's improbable, and why it's a violation of our oath to the U.S. Constitution and to the state of New Hampshire's Constitution, right? I do not legislate based on hashtags, and I do not think we should either, just because something is purportedly trending, which I'm not on Twitter, so I've never seen it, right? But let's be honest, let's be frank about what this is right now. This is a historic moment, not just in the state of New Hampshire, but it's a historic moment in America. This is the first time a legislative body has debated and will vote upon binding secession. Other secession movements that we've talked about, many of those are non-binding. They never get actual votes and debate on the floor. This is binding. It will be the first one debated since prior to the Civil War. That's a historic moment. That's also concerning that we're joining a very bad group of states that tried to overthrow the U.S. Constitution, right? That tried to overthrow a constitutionally elected and a constitutionally instituted government. I do not think this body should join such a group of states. We should not be joining those former Confederate States of America who were deemed treasons, right? I see right over my right-hand shoulder here, the man who beat back those who challenged our Constitution and defended it, right? The most U.S. service members that have died in any war was the Civil War. This body should not be proposing legislation that could throw us into the maelstrom of war, right? Into the jaws of certain defeat. It's a terrible thing to do to our constituents, a terrible thing to do to granite staters. So let's also be clear about a number of other things when we discuss the Constitution, because I'm looking at this strictly from a constitutional issue, right? The federal government is the only legitimate power to admit new states and extend or retract territorial boundaries. This is quite clear in Article 4, Section 3 of our state constitution. Our state has never within its constitution and never has the federal government suggested that states can decide that they can leave or to join the government unless the federal government allows so, right? There is no process for leaving this union, right? The union, as mentioned in Texas versus White, 1869, Chief Justice Salmon P. Chase explained in his majority decision, a 9-0 decision, a New Hampshire native, in fact, Salmon P. Chase was, but that He explained that the Union began during the Revolutionary War amongst the colonies. In his decision, he writes, quote, "We confirmed and strengthened and received definite form and character and sanction from the Articles of Confederation. And by these, the Union was solemnly declared to be perpetual," right? The Articles of Confederation of Perpetual Union. That's the name of the entire document. Our country was founded originally by that document. Chief Justice Chase then explains that the current Constitution was ordained to form a more perfect union, and I quote, "which extended to convey the idea of indissoluble unity. Therefore, the Union can never be dissolved. Anyone who thinks and purports that they can dissolve the Union single-handedly is wrong," right? Let's also discuss the idea that this is a referendum. This is no mere referendum. New Hampshire has no referendum. We have no state statute, nothing in our state constitution that suggests that we have a referendum, right? We have a constitutional process for amending the Constitution. I look at it this way. This is a race, right? If you run a 5K, you go each kilometer, right? Kilometer 1 was the committee, which, by the way, rejected this 21-0, recognizing it was unconstitutional and un-American, right? Step 2 is we go to the House floor and we vote on it, right? Every step along the way that you continue to complete this 5K is aiding and abetting and making this policy come to fruition, right? By bringing this to the people, we are aiding and abetting in the process of undermining the US Constitution and violating our oaths of office, right? And I could go on regarding the 14th Amendment and a myriad of, this open question of what is rebellion, which is not defined in the US Constitution, which quite frankly, after this vote, and now that it's roll called, there is a question of what do we do and how do we enforce the 14th Amendment, which we took an oath to the Constitution of? And I hope that we don't have to be answering that question on the House floor in the future. I hope that everyone says no to this constitutional amendment, because I would prefer not to see the partisan politics of trying to remove members of this House for arguably maybe violating their constitutional oath, right? It's deeply concerning to me. And so I hope that we can reject this. I hope we can stick with constitutional government. I hope that we can uphold the US Constitution. I hope we can continue to uphold the New Hampshire State Constitution. We should support the Union today, the Union tomorrow, and the Union forever. Thank you.
Does the member yield to questions?
Yes.
Member yields. Senator Klein Knight, you may inquire.
Thank you so much, Representative, for taking my question. Have any of your colleagues decided on who's going to run for president of New Hampshire?
That is not an appropriate question.
I'll go ahead.
We've had a request for a roll call, and now I'm going to ask, is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. Members will take their seats. This will be a roll call vote. Also come to order. The question before us is the motion of ITL on CACR 32. This is a roll call vote. The chair recognizes Representative Sylvia for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, if I know that New Hampshire did not delegate to the United States a power to prevent peaceful separation, and that the 10th Amendment to the U.S. Constitution recognizes
The powers not delegated to the United States by the Constitution, nor prohibited by it to the states, are reserved to the states respectively or to the people. Mr. Speaker, if I know that rebellion and insurrection are violent actions that stand in sharp contrast to the deliberative, thoughtful, and cordial process brought by sponsors and supporters of this amendment. And Mr. Speaker, if I know no member of this body should be threatened with retribution for their vote here today, and we should all take to heart the words of Article 30 of our Constitution, the freedom of deliberation, speech, and debate in either house of this legislature is so essential to the rights of the people that it cannot be the foundation of any action, complaint, prosecution, in any other court or place whatsoever. And Mr. Speaker, finally, if I know that this amendment reinforces Article 7 of our Constitution, which declared New Hampshire to be forever a free, sovereign, and independent state, then, Mr. Speaker, would I press the red button to stop the abuse of distant, illegitimate powers? Thank you, Mr. Speaker.
The chair recognizes Representative Baldessaro for a parliamentary inquiry.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, as I've flown back into New Hampshire a couple nights ago from Florida, I recognize there's no rebellion. And Mr. Speaker, if I know when I walk up to the State House and I see General Stark out there, he's rolling over in his grave to see what's going on here today. And Mr. Speaker, if you believe as I do, this move today is unconstitutional, it is an embarrassment for me to even get up here. It is a 21-0 vote in my committee, and that we as an Americans should stand tall, and especially for those that shed blood, that made the ultimate sacrifice, Mr. Speaker. And Mr. Speaker, if they believe as I do, then vote green, and let's move on and get this done. Thank you.
House will come to order. The motion before us is the ITL motion on CACR 32. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds.
Representative Rich.
All members present had an opportunity to vote. House will attend to the state of the vote. (323) voting yea, 13 voting nay. Committee report is adopted.
Mr. Speaker,
What reason does a member rise?
I asked that the remarks of the previous debate be placed in the permanent journal.
The question before the House, whether the remarks should be printed in the permanent journal. Are you ready for the... A division has been requested. Members will take your seats. Was there a request for a roll call? Representative Sofakakis has requested a roll call. Is that sufficiently seconded? It is sufficiently seconded. This will be a roll call vote. If you have a parliamentary inquiry, you'll have to come down here. Unlike when we were off campus, you come to the well now.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. I'm just asking, is this to print the remarks of everybody on this bill?
Yes.
Okay, thank you.
Yes. The question before us is to print the remarks of this debate in the permanent journal. This is a roll call vote. If you're in favor, you'll press the green button. If you're opposed, you'll press the red button. Voting stations are open for 30 seconds. Have all members present had an opportunity to vote? House will attend to the state of the vote. 278 voting yea, 62 voting nay. The remarks will be printed in the permanent journal.
All right, so this one is no debate, it's just division of the House.
I would ask everybody to stay in their seats. The next bill is a division vote with no debate, just parliamentary inquiries. Committee on State and Federal Relations and Veterans Affairs, to which was referred House Bill 1411 FN, an act relative to transparency of federal agency operations within New Hampshire. Having considered the same, report the same with the following amendment and the recommendation that the bill ought to pass with amendment. Senator William Foster for the committee. The amendment 0194H, printed in House Record 9, page 42. Are you ready for the question on the amendment? All those in favor say aye. Aye. Those opposed, nay. The ayes.
Liberty faces out in the crowd. We're here today to
If you love liberty, declare your independence by signing the Shire Society Declaration at shiresociety.com.
All right, good afternoon. Good to see all these Liberty faces out in the crowd. We're here today to see if our legislature will allow a question to be put to the voters of New Hampshire. Should New Hampshire peaceably declare its independence from the U.S. federal government? Some believe that this is a laughable question. Do they fear the answer? Some believe that the question of independence has been settled. If so, then our state's sovereignty has been stolen. In my path to liberty, I have learned that our state was created by the people in 1784. Prior to forming our government, in Part 2 of our Constitution, the people reserved to themselves the rights of the people in Part 1. Our Constitution places the Bill of Rights, the rights of the people, above and before the establishment of our government. Part 1, Article 7 reads, "The people of the state have the sole and exclusive right of governing themselves as a free, sovereign, and independent state, and do, and forever hereafter shall, exercise and enjoy every power, jurisdiction, and right pertaining thereto." which is not or may not hereafter be by them expressly delegated to the United States of America in Congress assembled. The United States at the time was under the Articles of Confederation. In 1789, the first peaceful resolution in America disposed of the Articles of Confederation and formed a new government under our current U.S. Constitution. Remember, the people of our state reserve to themselves every power not expressly delegated. Disposing of our state's sovereignty was never allowed. For the federal government, now national government, to consider the state of New Hampshire to be nothing more than a local office for the District of Columbia is to destroy the independence of our great state. Now I'd like to introduce one of our state's best constitutional scholars living today, Daniel Richard. Woohoo!
Thank you, Mike. Everyone hear me all right?
Yes. Go quiet.
All right, I'll try to speak up. Thank you very much. My name is Daniel Richard, and I support this measure. I support this measure because we need to have this dialogue. Our form of government is broken, and our state and federal government is morally and financially bankrupt. The federal government has destroyed our republic and replaced it with a national central controlled democracy. Our founding fathers created a constitutional republic, not a democracy. When I see politicians get out there and talk about a democracy, they're telling you the truth. They've created democracy. Patrick Henry and George Mason refused to sign the Constitution because they feared the consolidating nature of the Constitution would lead to today. I mean, literally, Patrick Henry stood on the floor of the Virginia legislature and warned all the Virginians, we're not done here. This document is not done. Amending the Articles of Confederation and the Federalist attempt to obtain too much power has proven to be right. Thomas Jefferson believed that the laws should sunset every 20 years and allow the next generation to decide for themselves what form of government they wish to have. Think about it. Does anyone in this room think that your children are bound by the contracts you sign? No, I don't think so. And you know, the fact that the U.S. Constitution, after it was written, has been amended habitually since. We have 26 amendments to fix a broken Constitution. So I would argue that it was, I would not have signed it myself. Will I honor and obey the instrument while it stands? Yes, I will. Do I agree that it's righteous? No, it's broken. It's severely broken. The federal government was created to do four things, folks: wage war, negotiate peace, establish treaties with foreign governments for our common defense and international commerce. 4, to establish rules of commerce between the states, between the Indian tribes, between foreign countries. It's referred to as the Commerce Clause. It was created to establish a medium of exchange and lawful money, gold and silver coin, to prevent fraud and inflation. What do we have today, folks? That's all they do is keep printing money. And that's why this is a serious measure that needs to be considered by the people of New Hampshire, because there is no money. Debt-based instruments called Federal Reserve notes are not lawful money. And show me the banking clause. Show me the banking clause where your state government has, or the federal government, has any authority to borrow money from a foreign bank and lend it and bribe the states. And that's what's been going on. Since 1933, the state has been bribed with debt instruments called Federal Reserve notes, and it's hijacked the state through the Commerce Clause. Folks, half of your state budget is predicated on federal money. The legislature assembles from January to June to do the people's business based on state taxes. Then they go home. The good little boys and girls go home, and guess who shows up next? The big boys. Who's that? No. Sununu and Company, the Executive Council, the governor. Where do they get that authority? It was a statute created in 1933. And the legislature gave the executive branch the ability of the legislature. They can't do that. It's called non-delegation doctrine. But it did. And so what do? This is what led to the arrest of the 9 people. They had no authority to assemble outside of our state house and do the business of the legislature and assume those powers and control. That's exactly what they did. It needs to stop. I filed the lawsuit in Rockingham Superior Court to put an end to this fraud. The lawsuit makes the case that why the people should consider as to whether we should continue with this form of government. And I say no. Why should any of us be responsible for the trillions and trillions and trillions of dollars that have been spent? And they want you to pay for it. Here's the scam in the statute that gives them the authority to borrow the money, and this is what I allege in our lawsuit, is they're signing your faith and credit. Where's your power of attorney? Did you give any member of your state government power of attorney to borrow money on your behalf? No, doesn't exist. So that's why I support this measure, and it's, look, the power belongs to the people. It doesn't belong to the legislature. Let me share with you another dirty little thing that's been done to us. In the 80s, 1980, they removed Article 99 of our state constitution that called for a convention to amend, alter, or strengthen our rule of law, our state constitution. They took it away. So now we have hat in hand, thank God for Representative Sylvia and those who are supporting him to take this initiative, to let the people decide. It's not for the legislature to decide. They're your public servants. They're trustees of a trust indenture called the state constitution. So this lawsuit tomorrow, the state's going to have to answer. We have them in a little bit of a pickle. The state, in order to defend any public servant, has to determine whether the monies allocated are righteous. In other words, taxpayer dollars can't be used to defend public servants who violate their oath of office. So the Attorney General is tasked to make that decision. He has a problem. He's named in the lawsuit. If he's named in the lawsuit, you're supposed to go to the governor and the executive council. You can't go there either because they're co-defendants, leaving what? The legislature to deal with this problem, as it should, because legal defense fund requires three things. Someone has to determine, in order for your money to be used to defend these people for violating their oath, for one of three reasons. One, that they have, in fact, acted within the scope of their delegated powers. Two, that the behavior wasn't reckless. And three, that it wasn't wanton. And I allege that all of them are indeed the case. And yes, this should be sent to the people for the people decide, not for our politicians. Thank you.
Thank you, Daniel. Our next speaker writes in depth for the Liberty Block, Elliot Axelman.
This historic legislation marks the culmination of 245 years of increasing abuses of our natural rights by the tyrants in Washington, D.C. Regardless of the politicians or party in power, these abuses have continued to increase. In 1776, the people of New Hampshire seceded from the British Empire because they could no longer bear the abuses of the tyrannical government. By many measures, the actions of our current federal government are far more tyrannical than those of the government we seceded from back in 1776. To those who claim that the Civil War settled this issue, we ask, if might makes right, if fear of violent retribution keeps one in an abusive relationship, is that a reason to stay or more of a reason to separate? If you are tired of being forced to pay for perpetual wars in faraway places, history has shown us that the federal government has no real desire to end unnecessary military operations across the globe. If you are sick of the failed war on drugs, civil asset forfeiture, illegal warrantless immigration and sobriety checkpoints, you should support independence for New Hampshire. Those and many more violations of liberty have roots in DC. Insanity could be defined as doing the same thing repeatedly and expecting a different result. We have been peaceful, patient, hardworking citizens and obedient serfs to DC for 245 years. We have exhausted every method of reforming the federal government imaginable. Our overlords in DC have continued to increase their powers while minimizing our liberties and violating our rights. We have campaigned and voted for the most pro-liberty candidates. We have called and emailed legislators, and we have signed many petitions. We have tried protests and lawsuits. Nothing has worked. With each passing day, we see that the values of New Hampshire citizens are diverging from the values held by those in DC and the other states of the Union. The people of California and New York simply have different values than we do. Voters of some states prefer socialism, gun control, mandatory masks and vaccinations, compulsory government education, prohibition of substances, and many more violations of liberty. And that's okay. They are different people with different values. We no longer find that we have more in common with the Union than we do with other nations around the world. Reasonable people would not believe that the people of Ukraine should be forced to live under the exact same set of laws as those in Kenya. Forcing two or more opposing cultures together in perpetuity simply cannot end well. The federal government steals around half of our annual salaries, and through agencies like the NSA, FBI, ATF, EPA, CBP, 400 total agencies, and 4 million total federal agents, uses the money to abuse us, spy on us, and control the economy, costing over $2 trillion in economic damage per year. Many criminal justice issues and much of corona fascism results from federal money and influence. The increasingly disturbing surveillance and police state stem primarily from DC. These and many other issues would cease to exist if we severed ties with DC and governed ourselves. The people of New Hampshire, innocent, peaceful, hardworking patriots, have not had the opportunity to vote on their relationship with DC politicians since a few delegates decided to join the Union 240 years ago, with the understanding that the federal government would always protect our natural rights and never violate the Constitution. How well has that worked out? Never in our lifetime have we had the chance to even make our voice heard on the question of whether to govern ourselves. If you do not yet believe that we should give up on saving the Union and fixing DC, how much more freedom must we lose before you are convinced that we cannot shrink the federal government back to its original size and that the only option is leaving and governing ourselves? A vote for CACR 32, no matter which side of independence you stand on, is a vote to trust the citizens of this great state with their own future. A vote against CACR 32 expresses the belief that only a small group of people in Washington, D.C. should control the lives of everyone in this state and all of our descendants. Thank you.
While the people reserve to themselves the right to revolution in Part 1st, Article 10, we are here today to head off any consideration of anything but a peaceful formation of a new government independent of rule from Washington, D.C. Today, we will ask our legislature to allow the people of New Hampshire to express their desire by putting the question on the ballot this November. Thank you for coming, and we'll take a couple of questions before the hearing. Any questions? Oh.
What does healthcare look like if we secede and leave our own nation?
I'm sorry, I'm old and hard of hearing.
What does healthcare look like if we secede? I mean, I'm for it, but I was just curious on.
Currently, we see healthcare under attack. Obamacare is beginning to look a bit like Building 7. I don't know what our healthcare system will look like. We have a lot of people now, doctors and nurses, who are refusing medical treatments, who are going independent. Those will be the first line of the new healthcare system in the new state of New Hampshire.
Thank you.
How do you plan on paying for roads that are federally funded?
Oh, the roads. We'll pay for it with Bitcoin mining.
How do you think the cotton will be picked?
As we know, cotton picking did not make the South poor back in the 1800s. It did not make them rich, sorry. We saw thriving states to the north, and cotton picking business was not exactly a thriving industry.
What happens if it doesn't go through? Is there opportunity to switch over to someone?
If this bill does not get to the people, we can always come back. We have a nice crowd here today. I think this sends a message that the people want to have the question put on the ballot, and we'll see what real, true support looks like.
When this goes in front of the full state house, will we be able to get a roll call vote?
Absolutely, yeah. Because they have to have a 2/3 margin to win. I think it's an automatic roll call. All right, we're going to head up for the hearing. Thanks for coming out today.
Thank you.
Thank you, Michael.
We'd like to invite you to visit freekeen.com. Freekeen.com features audio, video, and blogs chronicling the transition to a voluntary society. Freekeen.com also has comments and discussion forums so you can be heard. Freekeen.com.
I should be in Keene, New Hampshire with the Free Staters.
Live free or die, don't let the free. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty. In 1623, she touched the hand of history, led the colonies on, independence was won. The spirit lives today to guide New Hampshire on her way, independent and free, the home of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty. In 1623, she touched the hand of history, led the colonies on, independence was won. The spirit lives today to guide New Hampshire on her way, independent and free, the home of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty. In 1623, she touched the hand of history, led the colonies on, independence was won. The spirit lives today to guide New Hampshire on her way, independent and free, the home of liberty. Live free or die, don't let the freedom pass you by. Stand up proud and strong, and lead New Hampshire on. Live free or die, from the village green to the mountainside. Peaceful voices sing the song of liberty.